Chapter 3. The Demon Princess. Oh, it's Mikagami-chan. Back on the GP ship, Mitoto waved her hands at the ship projected on the screen. Me? Ka. Yay. Me? Sana stared at the hull of this ship. It was his first time seeing a Jurian royal ship. The ship looked like it was made out of wood except for the elegant oval capsule structure in the center. How a ship made mostly of wood instantly overthrew all these rows of pirates was beyond Sana. That ship must be incredibly strong, Sana thought to himself. A ship with a reflective surface. Could that be the Demon Princess of Jurai? Ananan heard Sana's words and looked suddenly surprised, and he wasn't alone in making that expression. Hey, it's the Demon Princess. The Demon Princess? You mean that Demon Princess? There's no mistaking it. A wave of the unrest quickly passed through the operators on the bridge. Surprisingly, the feeling of strain was even more intense than when they were surrounded by pirates. Sana began to worry as well. Had his misfortune struck again? The Demon Princess, who is that? He asked Ananan fearfully. No. Ananan dropped into a more serious voice unintentionally in response to Sana's question. I didn't say that. Please never say that or tell anyone I said that to you. I'm begging you. Is she by any chance a scary person? Sana said also in a lower voice. In this galaxy, there is no nation more powerful than the nation of Jurai. Of the Jurian royal family, she is the single strongest military power. Oh, well that's one way to put it. But she is a funny lady. Well, at least that's what Ms. Mitoto says about her. Oh, is that so? Yes, it is. Ananan's words gave a dramatically fearful expression, but Mitoto's were relaxed and calm by comparison. So, which one is it, for a Demon Princess of Jurai? Sana was quickly reprieved by Ananan. Sana, whatever you do not call her the Demon Princess. Her name is Lady Seto of the nation of Jurai. Okay. Well then, let's go say hi to her, Mitoto said, taking Sana's hand. That sounds an awful lot like intentionally walking into a tiger's den. Ananan looked like he was about to burst into tears. How many times had he made that face that day? But we have to. They asked for a report on this situation. Oh. Meanwhile, in an area of space not that far away on Ryoko Balta's ship, it seems that all our Confederates were captured. Well then, Ryoko said, listening to the adjunct's report. Her wavy black hair fluttered in the wind as she sat gracefully in her captain's chair. The strange sight she had seen just a short while ago floated on her mind. The bridge was wrapped in a strange feeling. All her subordinates' voices rang out as they stared enthralled at the GP ship projected on their screens. Everyone on the bridge was excited in the way a fox is when it chases a rabbit. Fufufu, it seems everyone that was after my prey was rounded up? Said Ryoko, who was wrapped up in the whirlpool of excitement even though she normally would have been very calm. We're lucky we stopped. If we hadn't, we'd have been caught in the Demon Princess's genocide dance like the rest of the pirates. Ryoko couldn't help but shudder at the fact. However, she quickly snapped back to her senses and regained her composure. Earlier, she had been eagerly chasing the GP ship, but when she noticed hundreds of ships also chasing it, she got a bad feeling and ordered an emergency jump out of the area, and now she was watching as all the other ships had been seized by the 7th Jurian Armada. Really, that was quite a dangerous situation. It looks like we just barely made it out of there. Her handsome expression faded a little. Captain, please forgive me. The adjutant, who usually didn't express his feeling, hung his head in sorrowful apology. He was a large man with a calm disposition whom Ryoko and the crew trusted immensely. I'm supposed to be second in command. I should have noticed. I understand. But you have nothing to apologize for. It was nearly impossible in that state to notice. Even we sent out a signal to the others, they were running after that GP ship like they were in a trance. I doubt we could have snapped them all back to sanity in time. We were too for a while. Maybe it's a new kind of decoy ship. Whatever it was unusual to say the least. Do you think it's some kind of new weapon that Jurai and the GP Academy have developed? There's no way of telling yet, Ryoko said, putting her hand on the monitor that was displaying the GP ship. It seems to me we should check it out for ourselves. The reflection of the representing their ship approaching the GP ship was reflected in Ryoko's eyes. Meanwhile, a transportation boat had anchored itself on a luminous path from the Mikagami to the GP ship. Ananin, Mitoto, and Seina were being slow to get to it for some reason. Ananin was visibly uneasy. Oh my, it's so dirty in here. Mitoto worried. They had the crew clean it, but given the limited amount of time they had to clean it and their lack of proper cleaning equipment, it was still pretty dirty. Ananin naturally was worried. You know it's customary for the people on the lower class ship to go to the higher class ship. Oh really? Seina asked in response to Ananin's mutterings that didn't calm him down one bit. Due to various laws, in an emergency situation like this, someone like Lady Seto has the power to take authority over a fleet that is outside their jurisdiction. In other words, Lady Seto is our boss now. It's a bit unnatural to have our boss come to us, isn't it? I still worry though. There's no need to worry about it, Ananin said. His body was trembling in nervous, fearful weariness. Captain, a transport boat from the Mikagami will be arriving shortly. Ananin looked up at the ceiling where the voice was being broadcast from. The tension in his face increased. I am okay. Everything is fine, just fine, but from his expression, he wasn't okay at all. He looked like a prisoner on death row. Vun. A heavy scream sounded faintly. Ah. Ananin overreacted to it. Anchoring complete. Is it okay to come aboard? Please wait for JJ just a moment, please. Ananin took out a sedative pill and a flask and quickly drank it. Well then, permission granted. Please come in. Affirmative.
Doki 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 doki.
Seina could hear Ananin's heartbeat through his chest.
Doki 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 doki.
The entrance hatch to the ship opened in what seemed like slow motion. The air was tense. He looks like someone on the verge of death. Seina thought out loud, looking at Ananin, who was looking at the door opening. His eyes were wide in terror.
Doki 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 doki.
His heart was beating in overdrive. Achoo! Mitoto suddenly sneezed behind them. Kia! Ananin jumped up really high like a cartoon character. Hello? The voice of a lady called out from behind the entrance. For a moment they had forgotten that they were supposed to be meeting Seto. Ananin's face flushed and turned a deep blue. Excuse me? Ananin bowed, kneeling on the floor, and Seina joined him. From above his head, he heard a gentle voice. Do you need some help? Can anyone explain what went on here? Was this the demon princess? Mitoto sure seemed glad to see her. Oh, Minaho-sen? Mitoto-sama? I didn't expect to see you here. Oh, is that so? The conversation continued over Seina and Ananin's heads. So, then this person isn't Seto. The odd woman turned to talk to Seina. Nice to meet you. I am Minaho Masaki, Seto's information officer. It wasn't Seto after all. This is great. Ananin breathed a great sigh of relief at the fact that it wasn't Seto who had come to visit them. Minaho smiled a little. Seto was well aware of the rumors about her. So, she sent Minaho instead. It was much easier for her to gather accurate information that way. Well then, which one of you gathered all these pirates? Was it you, Mitoto? Mitoto had the natural gift of chance, and her daughter Mahoshi Kuramitsu had inherited it from her. This strange event circumstances were more or less consistent with something that could happen to her, so naturally Minaho assumed it was her doing. Oh no, it wasn't me. Seina-chan did all the gathering. She said, delighted as she stroked Seina's hair gently. Say ne. This guy rounded up all those pirates. And nice to meet you. Seina Amata. Seina, Yamada? Minaho, who hadn't recognized him, had a confused look on her face. Ms. Masaki, I'll be glad to tell you the full story from my perspective. Mitoto continued to say. Ananin also concluded that he should do the same. First thing they did was state their ID numbers and position in the GP, and then their role on the ship. Mitoto was on top of things. They had arrived on Earth to find Seina's family. They put Seina on board, and then they talked about the decisions leading them to be surrounded by pirates. Ananin reported in as much detail as possible. I see. Well then, Seto said to Minaho, who was delivering a remote report to her on the Mikagami from the bridge of the GP ship. From her expression, one could see that she was very interested in what she heard. If that's the case, Kanemitsu and Minaho let out a simultaneous ugh. Kanemitsu, who also listened to the message next to Seto, got chills from Seto's reaction. Another one? He had witnessed that expression many times before. It meant that a new sacrifice had appeared before Seto and that Minaho and his workload was about to increase. But I wonder how Seina got into space, Minaho murmured. Oh, are you acquainted? No, of course. I haven't met him directly. Rather, I know of him from a variety of people. He is a friend of Tenchi's. His luck is rather bad. Minaho gave Seto a supplemental briefing on what she knew about Seina. That was quite a lot of details. Seto said as she judged what she had heard. Instantly a strange expression came upon her face. I wonder if this is Lord Yosho's doing, Seto said. She had a look of uneasiness on her face that was unusual for her. What's wrong? Kanemitsu asked, sensing her discomfort. No, it's nothing. All things considered, he managed to pull in quite a considerable number of pirate ships. Well then, I think he is quite lucky. After all, it's not every day a pure earthling gets to go out into space. It's improbable. Don't you agree? Seto said, grinning at Kanemitsu as she stared at Minaho, who was displayed in the middle of a screen. In that case, maybe he didn't encounter me by accident, she thought to herself. Anyways, what were you saying? Considering it a sign, Seto's smile grew even bigger. So many things have surprised me today. I never would have expected this to be his doing till Matoto said she was aboard. Kanemitsu hastily changed the subject. Oh, that's right. She should have been at GP headquarters doing janitorial work. Oh, was that where Matoto was supposed to be? Seto said with a wry smile. She wasn't smiling about Matoto, though. They were desperately trying to change the topic, and Seto wanted to watch them squirm. Next thing you know, Minaho will probably say the captain of the GP ship is requesting permission to come aboard. She thought to herself. Lady Seto, the captain of the GP ship is requesting permission to come aboard. Well, that didn't take long. Seto predicted his words accurately. He's requesting to come aboard. Well then, let him. Minaho showed a look of relief on her face upon seeing Seto's expression. If Seto made Seina her plaything, the GP Academy wouldn't put up a fight in admitting him. It seemed like his good luck wasn't over. But what Seto said next betrayed Minaho's expectations. Minaho, I'm putting you in charge of repairs on the GP ship. Huh? But that ship just pulled off the largest sweep of pirates in history. We can't just send it on its way in the condition it's in. Such behavior would bring shame to Jurai. Don't you agree? If Seto said so, then there was no room to argue about it. Of course, you are absolutely right. In the meantime, while we escort that transport ship, please let Ms. Matoto and the others know that they are guests of Lady Seto Kamiki Jurai and that they will be properly taken care of. Understood. Minaho said while lowering her head and holding her hands together. I feel sorry for poor Seina. Who should receive our guest? Yes, that will work. Hakurin, Jaikurin, Suerin, and Karen. Send those 4. Minaho and Kanemitsu looked at each other's face across the screen with matching frowns at Seto's words. She seemed to be up to something. 10 minutes later. As Minaho gave instructions to her subordinates on how to fix the GP ship, Matoto, Seina, and Ananin were greeted by a party of 4 entertainers. Minaho, what do you think of this? Using a direct line to Minaho, Kanemitsu spoke directly to her. Not even Seto knew about this line, but nothing escaped her for too long. You don't have any objections, do you? You look like my wife. Kanemitsu's wife was with him. She was the commander of the 7th Fleet, but she was on maternity leave. Damn, so that's the end result of Seto's meddling. As is typical when she brings one of her stallions close to a mare to test their readiness to mate. Is it really that big of a deal? Kanemitsu continued to ignore Minaho's joke. Seto kept a tight-knit group of people near her, even though she was close enough with Minaho to call Minaho her shield. Minaho didn't quite understand her reasoning all the time, but she also knew that many of Seto's actions had hidden meanings. It's unmistakably so. She can be quite an unpleasant woman, can't she? Haha, well then, that may be. But Lady Seto would never do anything unnecessarily. Maybe there are reasons for sending those four to entertain Sana. Heh, well they are girls, and he is young man. I wonder what her intentions are. I have no doubts about that. This was intentional. If I'm not mistaken, those four are just some girls that Lady Seto found somewhere. Oh, well it seems that they've finally arrived. Talk to you later, Mr. Kanemitsu, you old fart. Minaho cut the communication line there. Then she took the four girls who had arrived from the Mikagami and headed to the reception room where Sana was waiting. Are they a welcoming party? Yes, these four are here to take care of you. Sana stared at the four women behind Minaho and studied their appearance. He wasn't sure why, but they all wore a hood covering their heads and the lower half of the face, only leaving the area around the mouth exposed. If it's all the same to you, I'd like to stay here until the repairs are finished. Sana tried to find a reason to refuse, but there wasn't one. Sana, I understand that you don't want to see Seto, but I cannot afford to say yes. I'm sorry, Minaho thought. She was feeling a little pleasure in the act of teasing Sana. It seemed she had picked up one of Seto's bad habits. Well, Sana, it seems that it will take some time to finish all these repairs, but with your luck this isn't exactly the safest place for you to be. Ananin, freed from the pressure of meeting Seto, gladly broke his silence and made irresponsible remarks to Sana and Minaho. Well, it's an invitation, so basically you have to go. Do you have to go too, Ananin? Oh, no, I am busy with commanding repairs and other various things. Sana expected that response. At that moment Sana suddenly remembered he had forgotten about Kiriko. Maybe he could use contacting Kiriko as an excuse to keep from going aboard the Mikagami. It would be like killing two birds with one stone. Who would have thought that Kiriko merely existing would be of help to him all the way across the galaxy? Sana happily thanked Kiriko, who was far away on Earth. I have a lot of important things I have to talk to someone on Earth about, so about that invitation. Sana, there is no point in trying that, because we're currently jamming the communications of the pirates in the sector. We cannot communicate over long distances. Huh. Ananin's explanation made Sana worry that it would be impossible to reach Kiriko. Well, I'm sorry I didn't say anything sooner, but our ship has a special circuit that can be used to call anywhere on the Earth. Minaho informed him. Sana's heart trembled. It had been a long time since he had last contacted Earth. 12 hours had already passed since he had woken up. If I do not hurry, Kiriko will be worried, and besides. He glanced at Mitoto. Her smile again gave Sana a sense of security. If I'm with Mitoto, I'll be fine, right? So then, Sana-chan, shall we go? That sentence Mitoto uttered was the finishing blow. I guess so. Even though Sana had accomplished what he wanted, he had gotten it by picking the least desirable solution. All right. Oh! Well then, I almost forgot. I'd like to introduce you to your entertainers. At Minaho's words, the four women who had kept behind her until now came forward in front of Sana. They all removed the hoods at the same time. Wow! Sana muttered in spite of himself. Each and every one of the four women were beautiful. Not a single one among them was dressed in anything even remotely shabby. He couldn't take his eyes off of them. Well, they were entertainers after all, he thought, so it seems reasonable they would be dressed as such. But he was just a very unlucky person and just a simple earthling, and he had caused a huge uproar. He felt he had done nothing worthwhile to receive such entertainment. Oh, that's right, Seto is the supreme authority of that country. Maybe this is just normal? That's right, they are just ordinary entertainment girls. Rather than finding excessive value in it, I should just think of it as natural. Since Sana had bad luck since when he was young, he was used to underestimating himself and thinking of himself as hated by others. He was just an unlucky guy. Well then, Minaho waited until Sana had settled down to introduce the girls. This lady is Hakurin. It is a pleasure to meet you, Sana. Hakurin gave a respectful bow. She had beautiful light blue-colored straight hair, and she had a very serious look about her reminiscent of a girl who was the head of a committee. This is Karen. Thank you very much for all your help. She was petite, with a boyish figure and wheat-colored skin and brilliant red hair. Although she was tomboyish, she had a strong feminine charm to her appearance. This woman is Swearin. Swearin is what they call me. I am not good for much, but please treat me kindly. Not good for much. She looked like a newlywed wife. Her emerald green hair was beautiful, and of the 4 women, she was the only one who had glasses. But the glasses on her intellectual-looking bespectacled face did little to hide her expression that reminded Seina of Mitoto. And then the last one is, huh? There was no one where Minaho was pointing. What's this? Wasn't there one more person there just a little while ago? I am Jaikirin. Suddenly he heard a voice from behind his ear and felt 2 soft lumps on his back. Oh, excuse me, I didn't mean to surprise you. Jaikirin stared at Seina, who nearly jumped out of his skin, and smiled. She was a beautiful silver-haired woman. Her eyes were impressively decadent and deadly-looking. He got the feeling that she was more of the seductive type of woman rather than the romantic type. Shit, he's a nice one. At that time on the bridge, the operators were looking at the surveillance monitor and watching Seina's situation. Jurai's entertainment. I should have guessed it would be this great. And those 4 girls are so beautiful too. However, they couldn't exactly say that they wanted to be in his position. If you do not enter the tiger's hole, you will not get a baby. However, it is Seto in that tiger hole. Don't just give up, Seina, you fool. Yeah, Seina, you fool. They turned their anger towards Seina and repeatedly threw curse words at their screens. Meanwhile, Seina was boarding the wooden transport boat to Seto's ship. It had a plain structure with a simple dugout center. He would have hardly thought that something like this would be flying in space. Really? Is this outer space? He pondered a question he hadn't pondered since he first woke up this morning. Seina, we know that your star system is in the early stage of civilization, Hakurin said to Seina, who was next to her. She seemed to be the leader of this entertainment team, and for the moment she was in charge of most of the responses. As he learned later, the other 3 were watching Mitoto. Well, anyways. Early stage civilization? Yes, your people's civilizations have successfully escaped from the gravity zone on manned ships. When interstellar navigation becomes possible, you will have reached the 2nd stage. Well now, I heard your planet recently manned a vessel to its satellite. Wow! The boat was covered with a shield, and it approached the ship called the Mikagami. Is that thing really made out of wood? He asked as he leaned on the handrail of the ship and stared at the Mikagami. Yes! Jurai is a lush star with gigantic kilometer-sized trees, and that ship is made from one singular, continuous piece of wood except for some small exterior decorative pieces. There are really trees kilometers in size. On Earth they get to be about 100 meters or so, but... well, you'll only see such big trees on Jurai. Really? Is that water in the middle of that hoop? The main body of the Mikagami had a double ring shape. The liquid that filled it reflected the flickering and shimmering light on its inner ring. That's where they get the name Mikagami, water mirror, from. No, actually it was decorated after that name. It looks like a big pool. Yes, you can swim in it. What? We sometimes go swimming in it with Seto. How about it, Seina, if you like? Do you want to swim in it too? It feels really weird. Yes, it certainly feels nice. Do you just swim in the middle of space? Some misfortune will strike again if I do something like. Seina thought to himself as he vaguely smiled while Hakurin told him about it. Come now, we will arrive soon, and we will guide you to the guest house. Then you can take a break and contact the Earth before Seto greets you. Oh, okay. At the mention of meeting Seto, his spine stiffened. What is this? Seina, who was accompanied by Hakurin and the others, was guided inside Mikagami. He was overwhelmed by its strange and vibrant internal environment. The interior of Mikagami contained a space that could be said to be a world of its own. It was a residential district of sorts and was unimaginably big compared to the compact outside appearance of the ship. It was not a mechanical sci-fi world, but an area blended with nature. It wasn't surprising that Seina was surprised. I've seen sci-fi movies where the inside of the ship was bigger than the outside, but this much difference is insane. A river flowed, trees grew lushly, and animals roamed. It was an expansive environment. It was like its own entire universe, and it was all inside the ship. But Seina wasn't even really sure about that anymore. This is a spherical space of about 10 kilometers radius fixed in subspace by the power of Mikagami. Hakurin explained to Seina, whose mouth was gaping half open. So, technically speaking, we're not in the Mikagami. Haha. It's quite a hard to understand concept, isn't it? It was in the ship, but not in the ship. It was very zen. Seina's brain couldn't keep up. Hakurin gave a more detailed explanation, but of course Seina didn't understand it. He barely understood. What they forced him to learn on Earth. Didn't Ms. Hakurin mention a guest house? I hope that wasn't a mistake. Seina looked at the scenery in the residential area once more. He saw the hazy image of mountain ranges in the far distance. The green trees dazzled in his eyes. It feels nice. The air is so fresh. It's much more comfortable than that GP ship was. The humidity and temperature in here all have been adjusted to achieve the ideal environment for people. Seina nodded. He felt something nostalgic about the air and the atmosphere. Where had he felt? This? Oh, that's right. This is just like the air near Tenchi's house. This place reminded him of the area around the Masaki family's shrine. Do you like it? Yes, it's amazing. Isn't it? Seina felt something was wrong as he looked back at Hakurin and others in the back. Is something wrong? Seina had noticed something around him was off when he scratched his head. Metodo. What about Ms. Metodo? At that, everyone turned to look at the place where Metodo should be. She's not here. Metodo, who was supposed to be surrounded by the other 3 girls, was missing. No one had any idea how long she had been gone. How foolish of us. Please help me look for her. Jai-Kirin, go with Seina. Karen, swear and come with me. Hakurin turned bright red and took Karen and Swearin and ran off to search for Metodo. Jai-Kirin took Seina. Shouldn't we help find her? Those 3 and I are ladies in waiting, not in searching, and even if she is missing, Metodo won't be able to leave Mikagami, so don't worry. Heh, is this unusual? Or is this a routine thing with Metodo? Seina thought of himself as being pretty special even if it was in a bad way, but it seemed that in this strange place there were very many other strange people. This is the guest house. Please relax and enjoy yourself. Jai-Kirin told Seina as they reached a big long house. This thing is about the size I remember the Great Buddha Hall of today being that time I saw it on a school trip. The outer wall was covered with ivy and moss. There was a huge tree in the center of the house. No, it was more like the trees were built as a major pillar and the house was shaped like a round bun. In a little covered booth, there was a familiar black telephone set. The phone to contact Earth is over there. Excuse me. Seina practically jumped into the box and started dialing the number he was used to calling by now. Ring ring. Ring ring beep beep beep. Is anyone there? Ring ring. Ring ring. Beep beep beep. He was calling Kariko's house over and over again. I'm stupid. Neither Kariko nor Kai has the money for all these long-distance calls. Meanwhile, just as Seina was calling the Earth, Seto looked at another person on her communications monitor, smiling a little. However, the image was disturbed due to ultra-sophisticated eavesdropping communication, and only the other person's voice could be heard correctly. I see. Well, I understand the circumstances. So, will you please repatriate him as soon as possible? The communication partner said in a desperate voice. Indeed, it is strictly forbidden to contact early-stage civilizations with humans, let alone to send one into space, and although it is strictly prohibited by the galaxy law, Earth has no such precedent. Aren't you from Earth? You could tell there were mixed feelings bouncing around in Seto's words. But Lady Seto, well, thank you. But, Seto, it's a bit. Seto interrupted all communications so she could ignore the other person's words, and she smiled like it was just a pleasant surprise. He. It is unusual for her to get so riled up. Phew. She does not play around. Minaho, who came back from the GP ship, sighed, thinking of the future of the communicating party, and she looked at Kanemitsu with squinting eyes. Kanemitsu opened his mouth without being addressed. Lady Seto, should I return him to Earth after all, considering his unique characteristics? Of course, giving advice to Seto was pointless. Oh, I don't mean to force it if you don't want me to. Kanemitsu was belly-aching to Seto and had been for some time now. Shit, this shitty old hag is determined to do this. Even if I can't force her to do it, I can at least not make it easy for her. Oh, is there something you want to say? No. After Seto inquired, Kanemitsu metaphorically rolled to expose his belly. Then an operator's voice broke into the conversation, saving what was left of his dignity. Lady Seto, Kanemitsu, please excuse me, but I have found the identity of the person who recruited Yamada Sena to the GP on Earth. Second-class detective, Amain Konak. A profile picture of Amain holding up a peace sign was displayed on the communication screen. Seto figured it made sense that this would be her doing. Didn't her parents object to her joining the GP? Ever since she ran away from home, they just let her do whatever she wants. They just want her to settle down and get married as soon as possible. She explained that Amain's parents asked Seto to find Amain a suitor because she comes from a well-to-do family and needed to marry a certain class of man. The first guy she tried was a famous top-class chef. But he was chubby, and she grabbed his breasts and squeezed them in front of everyone and asked if he was even a man. She had similarly violent matchmakings with the others Seto sent to her. Seto showed Kanemitsu and Minaho the videos. They began to suspect Seto arranged the meetings just to get videos of them to laugh at. Meanwhile, Sena called Kariko again and got Kai. He said Kariko got a call from work and had to go. Sena hung up because there was no point in talking to Kai anymore. Jaikirin snuck up really close behind Sena and asked who Kariko was, startling him. He noticed that Jaikirin and Amain were like yin and yang to each other. Amain had blonde hair like the sun and Jaikirin had gray hair like the moon. She asked if Kariko was Sena's lover. He told her she was more like a sister. Jaikirin got a strange look in her eyes. Mitoto showed up beside them and broke the tension between the two. She reminded them they were supposed to go see Seto. Jaikirin contacted the others and told Mitoto to wait there while she took Sena to go see Seto. Sena wanted Mitoto to come with him so Seto would seem less intimidating. Jaikirin told her she couldn't come because she needed to call her father, Minami. Her family had been worried about her. Mitoto was worried that her father would get angry, so she ran off to the phone booth to call him. Oh, that Mitoto. Oh, that Mitoto indeed. Jaikirin took Sena by the hand and took him to see Seto. A few minutes later, Sena's heart was beating violently in front of the gate to the transfer pad that led to Seto. He thought about what Kariko would tell him in the situation. Imaginary Kariko cheered him on. Jaikirin said that she could not accompany him any further and sent him ahead of her. She wished him luck. He stepped through the gate and onto a transport pad. Everything around him turned white, and then he was teleported elsewhere. Seto was sitting on a throne in front of him. She welcomed him to the Mikagami. He noticed how beautiful she was and how odd it was for him to meet so many pretty women in such a short time. Nice to meet you. I am Kamiki Seto Jurai. Sena couldn't believe that she was the one people called the Demon Princess. She was completely different from what he expected. He found her gentle and didn't see what all the commotion was about. Kanemitsu, who was next to Seto, just stared at Sena, feeling sorry for him. Suddenly, he felt nostalgic for some reason. He felt like this wasn't the first time he had met Seto. She asked what was bothering him. He said it was nothing and introduced himself. He turned red and bowed profusely. She laughed and said there was no need to get like that. Then she introduced Kanemitsu as the commander of the 7th Fleet. She asked him to come with her to explain his story to her. They walked to another transport pad and arrived at different but gigantic residential area, bigger than the one they were at before. They were very high up, and he could see the guest house and a large garden area from where he was. There was a huge tree in the center. It looked like the tree was supporting the sky. He had passed by it earlier with Hakurin but had been too close to see what it was. Seto gave Sena some tea and started off their conversation by thanking him. He asked what she was thanking him for. She told him it was because he was the one who put in the coordinates that got the pirates. That was the first time he had ever been thanked for something good. She explained how hard it was to catch pirates. What he did was essentially a miracle. Hey Sena, your bad luck is a tremendous talent if you change your perspective. Surely you'll receive a big welcome when you get to the GP. Sena doubted the words in his ear for a moment. Welcome. What a delightful word. Kanemitsu butted in. It's hard to say this, but in fact, it is forbidden by galaxy law to send a pure earthling like Sena into space. Seto slowly closed her eyes in support of what Kanemitsu had said. So, we will take responsibility and send you back to the Earth safely and erase your memories. This shocked Seina. Do you still want to join the GP given the possible dangers? Seto asked Seina. This was the first time he was needed by people. He decided he didn't want to go home. She supported his decision. He thanked her. I will make arrangements so that you can stay. In the meantime, you are welcome aboard my ship, Seto said. He stared at her face. Is something wrong? He told her about how he felt nostalgic when he looked at her. He felt the same thing with Minaho as well. Really? Well, maybe you have seen me before. Minaho is Tenchi-san, maybe that's why. She asked if he had put 2 and 2 together yet. He had gotten the pamphlet at Tenchi's house after all. What? He began to remember that a main had left a recruitment packet for Tenchi. He began to ask questions. Well, then, is Tenchi-senpai an alien too? He was born and raised on Earth. He sure is a cute one, Seto said. The word alien was a strange one to Seto. He was an alien to her after all. She explained that Sasami and Aika were her grandchildren. This baffled him because Seto looked to him like she could have been Aika's sister or Sasami's mother. Seina tripped on a tree branch and fell on his face. Are you okay? Seto asked. She cleaned off Seina's face with a handkerchief. It's fine. I'm used to it. Seto looked at him seriously for a bit, then she burst out laughing. Good, ha ha ha. They got up. Hakurin came to get Seina. She bowed to Seto, then took him away. Seto told Kanemitsu that Seina reminded him of Yosho when he was young. Seina was taken back to the guest room and saw Metodo apologizing profusely on the phone. Hakurin explained that Metodo had a special talent that caused her to wind up in weird places. It was a vague explanation to say the least. But Seina, who suffered from misfortune, understood it painfully. No matter how strictly guarded Metodo was, she ended up in places with even the most maximum of security measures in place. It seemed she had come aboard while cleaning at GP headquarters and didn't notice till they had left. Minami on the other end of the line was angrily yelling at her about how she was supposed to call him whenever she ended up in weird places. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Seina, I was scolded __, she said. Yes, I heard. She grabbed Seina and cried on him as she played with his hair. Hakurin came in and told them that their dinner was ready. Oh, yes, but... Seina looked at Hakurin silently begging for help. There was no indication that Metodo's crying was going to stop anytime soon. Hakurin smiled at him. Ms. Metodo, dessert is pudding. Pudding. She instantly bounced back to a happy state. Yes, please come to the cafeteria. Metodo rushed to the cafeteria. Seina was dumbfounded by the quick change in her disposition. Well, Mr. Seina, let's go. Seina took Hakurin's hand as she led him out. Perhaps you should have started out mentioning pudding, he said as he looked at his shirt that was damp with Metodo's tears. If you hadn't comforted her first, it wouldn't have worked. Hakurin said, you should change your clothes. Seina changed and admired the view from the terrace he was on. At dinner, Seina found that the food was very different from what he was used to at home. Due to his bad luck, his family never ate out. He noticed the organic chandelier above. Jiraians liked to integrate nature with their appliances. It was a naturally grown luminescent plant. The big tree he had seen earlier was essentially a glorified Christmas tree with built-in organic lighting, and at night the residential area was lit by similarly related plants that grew in the fields. Hakurin poured Seina a fruity amber liquid that was delicious and bubbly. You can have as much as you want. It's a gift from Seto. He did not know it at the time, but it was made from the fruit of the imperial tree. Usually it was made into fruit liquor. It was so rare that not even royalty could always get the chance to drink it. They usually sent one to the head of every planet they were friendly with every year as a goodwill gift. In the past, one bottle went to auction, and it had gone for the price of a residential planet. It had no fixed value, but it was at least enough to buy a whole continent. Even though Seina wasn't aware of this, the others around him were. The 4 Seto scouts knew as they watched him drink it. They brought in his food, and they brought Matoto's pudding in. Next to Sana, Matoto was happily poking her pudding with a spoon. Wow, I have pudding! Matoto continued to be adorable and thanked Sana for her pudding. Later, Sana wanted to go for a walk, so Hakurin, against his wishes, accompanied him. He was shy about it as he didn't have much experience with walking alone with pretty ladies. She noticed his melancholy expression and offered to let him walk alone. He declined though. He told her he would rather have her show him around the place. They went towards a river. The river appeared wide and very shallow. Up close they could clearly see each stone on the river bottom shining like a jewel. Small fish were also swimming. Downstream, the parents of six-legged animals that resembled horses were drinking water together. Sana said it was very peaceful. He heard something behind him. When he looked behind him, he saw a huge beast's nose. It pushed him into the river. He looked up at it. A pig that looked like a big caterpillar was staring at him. The water was pretty cold. Are you okay? Mr. Sana asked Hakurin, who had also fallen into the water next to him. She had gotten pulled in by his luck. He apologized. She apologized for not doing her job of protecting him. I'm sorry. No, 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 I'm sorry. After apologizing in circles for a long time, Sana sighed deeply. Hakurin smiled at Sana, who was in a bad mood. I heard your luck was bad. Is it always like this for you? Yes, I'm nothing but a bother to others. Well, you're just poorly. She froze up mid-sentence like a computer does. He didn't think she was even breathing. Hello. After what felt like a few minutes, Sana taped Hakurin on her shoulder. He called her name a few times. Understood. Hakurin restarted abruptly. But I understand. I will protect you forever, Sana. Sana didn't expect this, and so he froze up as well. But after a while, the cold night's wind made him sneeze. This brought them back to reality. They went home. Hakurin grabbed his hand and was walking really fast as she took him there. Please slow down. Her rate of walking was inhuman. Are we back already? He asked. It was still early. That should have been a long distance, but they had gotten back in under a minute. We're undergoing special biometric adjustments, she said while she took off her wet t-shirt and began to dry off Sana. I can dry myself off. He shyly turned away, but she didn't stop. She asked him to hurry up and take off his pants so she could dry them. She put her hands on his belt, and he jumped back across the room at a rate comparable to the speed she had been walking a moment ago. He said he would do it himself. She continued to do it anyway because it was her job. He tried to avoid looking at her. He started getting red from embarrassment. Suerin and Matoto suddenly appeared next to him. He wasn't sure where they came from but was still embarrassed. He wondered where they came from. They said they had been there for 5 minutes already. Hakurin explained to Sana how that was possible. Suerin had a thin shadow. She was a girl with little presence. She was a supernaturally stealthy woman. Sometimes people would recognize her, but not recognize her as Suerin. Her ability was so great that she could go to any family's family function, and it would take over 2 hours for someone to realize she wasn't their relative. Even Seto sometimes didn't notice her. She had brought Hakurin a change of clothes. It got big. Again, Sana stiffened to surprise. Sana got embarrassed and apologized. They were very shocked. He heard Karen's voice from afar. She yelled at them. What are you doing in here? How long does it take to change clothes? They asked what was up with Karen and why she had let Matoto get away from her. She said that she couldn't keep her in one place on her own. Matoto went missing again as they talked, so they split up again to find her. Karen went north, Hakurin and Suerin disappeared into the dark like ninjas. Jaikurin was again left with Sana. She escorted him to the guest house so he could take a bath. The guest house bath was a giant hot spring bath way too big for one person to use alone, but Sana found it relaxing. Sana thought he could write a book about all the crazy things he had seen that day. Jaikurin came in unexpectedly to wash his back. Poor Sana. He didn't know how to deal with this much attention. He got excited again and hit it with a towel. Jayakiran slid in front of him. What's the matter? While Sena was trying to calm down, Jayakiran had invaded his personal space. She grabbed his shoulder. He tried to get away, but she was too strong because of her bio-enhancement. Jayakiran looked straight at Sena and gazed into his eyes like a siren. An awkward sexual tension filled the bath, which ultimately only led to back scrubbing. Mikagami hibernation space, a star in the sky, a dark room. Mirror, Seto and Seto. I heard that you have met him before. Somehow you remember, but I do not. That is my only unique memory. Is that all? Yes, my only one thing. I see. That puts us in a difficult position. He was about the same at that age. I'm happy to meet him again. The next day the GP ship was repaired and ready to leave. Inanen thanked Seto. She asked him to deliver Matoto and Sena safely to the GP and told Sena to do his best. They headed towards the Galaxy Academy. They jumped off, but when they came out of the jump to the Academy, their ship's space pirate alert sounded. It had only detected one ship, though. They collected data on the ship's identity. It was Ryoko Balta's ship. The crew on the bridge stood up and cheered ecstatically. Everyone made a big ruckus over the news except for Inanen and Sena, who was confused. They sent a message to invite her aboard. Inanen stood in front of the crew trying to leave the bridge. As a GP ship, they were not allowed to invite a pirate to come aboard. They death-stared Inanen for blocking them. An hour earlier, Ryoko's ship was watching the GP ship leaving the Mikagami. They wondered what was on board the ship when they received a communication from Seto. She dared them to see what was on board. Back on the ship an hour later, the crew had tortured Inanen into letting Ryoko come aboard. The appearance of the bridge had changed completely, and blurry photographs of an out-of-focus black-haired space pirate woman were displayed on each and every screen or monitor on the ship. You couldn't even tell what the woman looked like from them. They were too blurry. It was barely clear enough to tell that it was a woman. But the crewmen didn't care about such things. They were very excited. A small flag with the name of Ryoko and a fan were swung about by a crew member who was calling her name over and over. Sena wondered what was going on. Sena, I knew from the beginning. Your talent was truly wonderful. The other crewmen all nodded together. Sena couldn't remember the other crew members' names besides Inanen's. I am Alan, my thinner counterpart is Barry, and my fat friend is Cohen. What is the captain's name? I forgot. The tall operator named Alan tilted his head. They didn't know, and they said that since they couldn't recall, it didn't matter. They told Sena that Ryoko had over 1,389 official fan clubs and 10 times more unofficial clubs. She was the third most popular idol in all the GP. Sena pointed out all the blurry pictures. They said there were no clear pictures of her. When you are attacked by a space pirate, you rarely live to show the evidence of seeing them. However, the valuable photographs are monopolized by other major fan clubs with the original photos, and they are open to their members only. The membership fee is stupid, and the motivation is impure. He showed them a picture and proudly declared it to be a photo of a copy of a copy of a copy, which was more than most clubs had. There are a lot of pirate fan clubs in the GP, and the GP cracks down on them every so often, one crew member said. Our relationship is quite delicate. I will skip the details, but there is an implicit rule between us and the space pirates. Barry explained that while Ryoko was a pirate, she was very delicate and didn't like to hurt anyone. They described her as a beautiful butterfly. Sena was confused. The ship's side airlock was completely opened, and they got nearer to her ship. It was apparent that they wanted her inside them. Who are we to say no? Asked Ryoko. She thought about her communication with Seto. Seto had called her and told her a secret weapon was on board and encouraged her to go see it. Ryoko was going to go see it anyways, but that made her really want to see it. As she boarded the ship, she came in and found no one aboard. She adjusted her shields. She came to the bridge, and it was dark, but she, her adjutant, and a few guards were greeted with a surprise greeting as the lights turned on. A few minutes later, Ryoko knew about her reputation in the GP, but wasn't expecting anything like what she had found. She was feeling very uncomfortable and noticed the odd boy sticking out in the crowd who also clearly felt just as uncomfortable as she did. That made her feel close to him. He noticed Ryoko's eyes, and their eyes accidentally met. The boy bowed down blushing. Oh, he's cute, Ryoko thought. Mitoto broke her line of sight and greeted her. Ryoko, thank you for coming to see us. Thank you, Mitoto. Mitoto handed her a bouquet of flowers. They knew each other. Mitoto cleaned her ship once. The rest of the crew did not know it, but it was actually Mitoto who took the one and only picture of Ryoko all her fans coveted. Thank you very much for your enthusiastic welcoming. I am looking forward to meeting the captain of this ship. Alan introduced himself as acting captain and Barry as the captain's captain and Cohen as the captain's captain acting on behalf of the captain. And Nanan was tied up in a box. Ryoko was not amused by this. She didn't feel like talking to such vulgar people. Well then, may I ask whichever is the captain of you three captains about yesterday? That was all this guy. They pointed to Seina. Ryoko was surprised that he was the one who did that to all her friends. Seina shrugged his shoulders towards Ryoko with confusion.